Abigail here with the astrology of this week. This week is interesting because we have like two very concentrated days and then stuff unfolding in between. So it's unlike the last 2 weeks, which were like Monday something, Tuesday something, Wednesday something, and you get it. This one is like Monday, bunch of stuff, Wednesday, big event. And then there are gaps. So I do think this is an opportunity to kind of regroup between these days and to process and understand we are hitting all of the stuff that happens once we enter into Leo, and that is where we get back into back into contact. We're still in the Mercury retrograde, folks. At least I am while I'm recording this. When you see this, we will be clear, we will be free, we will be moving forward, but we will be having that contact that the sun gets with all of those great outer planets. And so it's a really intense moment, it's an intense energy. And we start off on Monday with the sun pretty much doing the most with those things. It starts out with the sun sextile Uranus, and as we move through the day, sun will hit its exaction with its opposition with Pluto, and then it will go into a trine with Neptune. And just a reminder, Uranus, Gemini, Pluto, Aquarius, Neptune, Aries, Sun in Leo. And so we're having these big, impactful outer planet connections at 4 degrees. And this is a part of that whole thing, that Barbalt's basket. I saw someone call it like the pentacle or something, because it is technically, you can draw a pentacle with the points, which I kind of like, because why are we still naming stuff after old white dudes? Like, I know he was talking about the configuration, but let's not center them. Uh, I do think it is a turning point, but I don't know that Barbalt and I had the same vision for humanity. He was known to be, from what I understand, to be a bit racist and a Nazi apologizer in the very least. So while I do think the configuration is important, I also think because of the outer planet influences, it is something that develops over time. Like, I don't know, unless you have exact planets, that you're going to have a whole lot of like, oh, things are on the up and we're entering a halcyon stage for humanity. It is, to me, it's like riding a ship, which is turning a ship. And when you do that, you have to swing against currents and against winds, and it's a lot of pressure and a lot of effort and a really tense time if you've ever been around ships. Um, and so, especially like ships without a motor, I'm talking about sailing boats. So that's what this feels like, and it is a writing that is going to happen up until 2028 into the 2030s. So know that this whole configuration takes time. Now, the moon was involved on the day that happened. What was it? Last Thursday? Um, no, it was last Friday or Saturday or Sunday. Anyway, so there is kind of an element in our personal lives where things are shifting and changing, but it's not going to be an overnight shift. It's not going to be an automatic release unless you have specific triggers in your charts that are like that. Specifically, I would say probably stuff in air signs and fire signs. But at the same time, all of this is kind of interlocked, right? Because we have these big trines and we have oppositions and we have these sextiles. And so everything is really intertangled. And so it's going to be really hard to suss out who is doing what and what is going where. So I wouldn't hang one's hat on this being the thing that like transforms things in this moment if you are specifically looking for release. However, it is something to watch as a storyline and as a transit as we move through space and time. So we've had the Barbalt basket with the moon at 4 degrees of Libra and all that happening. That happened last week. And now we're heading into the sun going into its exactions. And so this is, I think, where we might see the themes of this configuration happening. And like I said, I don't know that I agree with Grandpa, old Barbalt, with Grandpa about what success looks like and what change looks like. But I do think in the midst of this, we're having forest fires, which is very Neptune and Aries energy. Also, I said every time we get an aspect um with Mars and Neptune, we are going to see fires. We are going to see explosions and things like that. And Mars is loosely sextile Neptune, loosely. But all this started when it was closer to exact on July 4th with Uranus. And so I think a huge theme of this configuration is climate change, is the way the world works, also, which is also finding a system that a majority can agree on to turn the ship around. Like, we have to pick something. And it can shift and change over time, but we can't just all higgledy piggledy do what we want, because people who want to destroy things are much more organized than that. And you have to kind of have equal organization if you're going to win. That, or so chaotic that they can't do anything, but that's a can of worms of its own. So, Sun sextile Uranus, Sun opposed Pluto, Sun trine Neptune. This is a huge amount of pressure on the psyche and on the self. You might feel around this time a massive amount of pressure to shift and change. Give yourself a bit of a break. You are, and you have. And with this energy, there's not much you can do besides one foot in front of the other, because these outer planets are so big. That's kind of what happens with the outers, is it's more of an observational situation. You can work with it, you can do practices and activities, but it all takes time, and it all will do its thing, and all of these planets are going to retrograde back later this year and into 2027. So it's an important point, it's an important place, but don't put pressure on yourself if stuff doesn't start rolling right away. Now, bright side, we are in the post Mercury shadow retrograde, so we are finally moving forward, and we're going back and covering the things that we processed during the retrograde. And usually I find in a more positive way. So if a relationship fell apart of any kind during a Mercury retrograde, it is oftentimes kind of picking up the pieces and recognizing that maybe it wasn't as good as you thought. Sometimes it's reconciliation, but I find that things that often unravel during the Mercury retrograde, it's like maybe it's had its time. Maybe it's done its thing. So allow that to release, allow that to let go. Also remember, and I saw someone say this and I was like, yeah, that's a really good point. The last time we had Mercury retrograde in Cancer was the summer of 2020. So also maybe go back and look at that to see what you were processing and going through. Specifically what house it's in your chart, especially if you use whole sign, because it's whole sign for whole house. Um, and just see, like, what were you processing? Because as I'm sitting here, I'm like, oh wait, I'm processing almost exactly the same thing, just 6 years later. I was single then. I had a long relationship that ended last year. I am single now, and the same struggles I was having around community and connection, and as an autistic person, which I didn't know before and I do know this time, um, processing how I feel about it, being fairly isolated. Now, with COVID, it was isolation because of society, and now it's isolation because I'm disabled and I mask and I have a cane and things like that. And I cannot participate the way that I used to. And people do treat you differently. And while I may not mind it as much, because magically my brain was like, well, yeah, that seems like we're disabled now, we're just gonna have to deal with it. Even though I have managed to survive it, it is difficult to survive it in the context of society. So, and my Cancer house is the 11th house of other people, communities, and groups. And so, and I also have Juno, the asteroid, in there, which, so if you have planets in Cancer, this is an added layer. Juno, the asteroid of partnership and connection, and I really craved partnership and connection of a romantic kind back in 2020, and I am craving it again in 2026. And so I'm using my chart as an example because it is very one to one, and I would not be surprised if some of those similar themes are coming up for you as well, especially if you have like a point you can touch on, like somewhere between the middle to end degrees of Cancer, some planet in there, and you're like, oh, we're being touched by Mercury again multiple times. No. So yeah, I think that's an important point. I know I'm kind of getting off of this week, but with the outer planets, we are looking at years of information, and so I think it's important, even if it's not related, to kind of go back and look at that. Also, 9 years ago, the nodes have just shifted into Leo and Aquarius. 9 years ago, they were in oppositional places, same time of year. Lots of stuff was happening to be done. Those themes are returning now. So just take a peek at the past, because these massive outer planet configurations often bring that up, especially if you go back and look at charts and see if anything is at those 4 degrees of Gemini, Leo. And of course, it almost touches, it touches everybody but the mutable. No, it touches the mutables too, because of Because if you're honest, every single chart is getting some kind of aspect. Every single kind of chart is getting an aspect from the outer planets because we have fixed, cardinal, mutable all popping off. And so check your chart for where these are. Where is my special little place? Venus, which makes sense that relationships would be in high relief. I should probably, after this video, go look up where Venus was back when Mercury was retrograde back in 2020. Look at your chart, double check which planets are at that 4 degrees of any placement in your chart, and go back and look. I also have Jupiter at 6 degrees of Libra opposing my Venus. This story of connection and care, and it's in my 8th and 2nd house. Big things around what I have, what other people have. And so you'd be like, Abigail, I don't care about your chart. That's fine. I'm just saying there's a lot of information you can go and find in your chart. And if you don't want to look at it yourself, you can hire someone like moi to take a look at it for you, and I will do that. Also, I am offering on my Instagram, if you book me through DM, I am going to be offering 20% off everything above a 30-minute reading for August for eclipse season. So if you are interested in a reading, it's a nice little discount. And I offer like different, instead of offering like separate offerings, I just offer different times. And then you can book a time slot and I will fill that time as efficiently as possible so you get the most that you can. Anyways, so these big things, the sun hitting there, if you have anything early degrees, and then I'm remembering where my Mars is, early degrees of Leo, this is being pulled into this whole configuration along with Jupiter. So just keep all this kind of logged away. There's a lot of important stuff. This week is a great week to take a peek at the past. We're kind of moving forward with Mercury retrograde. So this information that we're getting now is going to be really helpful down the road, down the line. Is it maybe helpful right now? No. Is it really interesting? Yes. Then on Wednesday, we have Venus square Mars. Pretty tense. Mars is at 21 degrees of Gemini, and then Venus is at 21 degrees of Virgo. They are both ruled by Mercury. That is now direct. So there is a bit more ease this go around. Mars in Gemini is playful and frivolous. And very quick on its feet. And Venus in Virgo is very critical and very hyper fixated on finding solutions and finding goals and orientations. Also, I find that, you know, if you're a native with Venus in Virgo, you can often over sacrifice yourself. I actually, interestingly enough, find a lot of correlation, even though a lot of people would argue with me, but I do find a lot of correlation, at least when it comes to enabling and sacrifice, with Libra moons and with Libra moons and Virgo placements sometimes. Depends on the chart overall. But I don't know why I mentioned that. But with this Virgo, so it's this kind of careless speed coming up against Virgo being like, no, we need to figure it out. We need to have a plan. We need to do it the right way. And this is asking us to find a middle ground between solutions, but also moving forward expeditiously. Also remembering that once Mars goes in Cancer, it is in detriment. Well, it's in fall. It's in fall and is not the happiest and kind of grinds its little teeth all the way through because it doesn't want to progress through Cancer. It wants to sit and wallow and think about the past and recreate situations where things were different so that progress can be safe. And progress is never safe. So in this moment, Venus and Mars are like fighting over the speed of things, over the energy, over being meticulous and having standards, but also not getting weighed down by those standards. And with squares, it's about finding the perfect amount of like friction to create balance, what I find. So you have to sit with the discomfort and kind of wrestle with it to get it to a point where it works. This can lead to a lot of frustration. This also might be a day where you're like, Jesus, I thought the Mercury retrograde was over, and it's just that Mars Venus square kind of causing a bit of chaos in the cosmos, especially once again if you have anything at 20 degrees of those signs, or 21 degrees of mutable earth or air signs. So yeah, and then same day, Sun conjunct Jupiter. And at the same time, at the same degree, we have the full moon in Aquarius opposing. I will do a longer video on that with an accompanying tarot reading. But it's just big energy. Also, this full moon in Aquarius opens the eclipse portal. So we're heading now into the eclipses that will happen 2 weeks after this, with the first Leo eclipse at 20 degrees of Leo, and then that final Pisces eclipse at 6 degrees. 6 degrees, I think it's 6 degrees. 6 degrees of Pisces, full moon. So new moon Leo, full moon Pisces. It's really big. It's really intense. Also, remember that we are coming to a culmination when it comes to Pisces because have already shifted from the nodes, and so a lot of doors are going to start to close on really big themes. So look forward to that. Anyways, this full moon in Aquarius is functioning off of a conjunction with Pluto, a sextile with it's wild, a sextile with what am I trying to say? Not a sextile, a trine with Uranus, the opposition. Is it a sextile? Why am I blanking? Yeah, it's a sextile. I don't know why I didn't think of sextile. Sextile with Neptune. A very, very loose sextile with Saturn. Probably not enough for me to mention, especially considering how crazy the rest is. And so this is going to firstly feel eclipsy because it is associated and attached to the eclipses, but also because we have almost all of the heavy hitters involved and none of the personal planets. And without any of the personal planets, there's no kind of like, well, a lot of people call Jupiter, I think, a personal planet. I kind of see the personal planets more as like Mars, Mercury, Venus, because I see the Saturn and Jupiter as titans. In my opinion, they stand above us all, and not titans in the literal mythological sense. Just like they have a bit more impact. And so this is a huge moment for this Pluto transit. If you have any planets at 6 degrees, within 5 degrees on either side of this 6 degree Aquarius, anything early degree Aquarius, anything early degree words, early degree Leo, this is huge. Impactful. Is it going to be kind of a slow release and probably a rough couple of days? Absolutely. Not rough because necessarily horrible things are happening, but rough because it's just so much energy with so little place to go. And it feels like there's a lack of function, and it also feels like, oh, I'm getting dunked again. I'm getting submerged by the universe again. And then, like I said, we also have Venus square Mars functioning. I can see things getting testy with people, relationships. Maybe this isn't the best time to have a conversation. Maybe wait a couple days till it's kind of toned down a smidge. If you do have to have a conversation, it's really impactful. It's really important. With Venus square Mars, though, you are going to have to do the thing. You can't wait for the optimal time or the perfect time, which is me sitting here being like, yeah, waiting probably isn't a good idea because this energy is very much like, oh, there is no perfect time to have a hard discussion. There is no perfect situation that you can manipulate, that you can control, Venus and Virgo, to make a difficult conversation easy, especially if you want to be honest, especially if you wish to be true to yourself. And you are doing something called scaffolding if you are picking optimal times to have conversations. I'm not talking about being accommodating, being like, oh, maybe we shouldn't have this talk right after you get off work. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about being like, oh, this person has all of these needs and stuff. And so I have to figure out the perfect way to create the perfect situation and the perfect scenario in order for them to accept and hear what I have to say. That's not what we're needing to do. That's actually the opposite of what we need to do. And so allow yourself to feel into this, allow yourself to move through this. Also, I'm going to plug my upcoming class on Psychic Connection. It's 5 weeks. I have a sliding scale option. I have a set price option. Sliding scale is 100 to 300. So anything between those numbers, and the set option is 250. But it is a 5 week course on connecting to your psychic gifts. The first week is actually psychic gifting in the natal chart. So you'll actually get a little mini reading from me in class because I'm keeping it down to 5 people in class of your psychic gifting. So if that's, and the price, especially the sliding scale, is pretty reasonable. So if that's something you're interested in or curious in, I think that's the reason I'm mentioning it is because I think this full moon in Aquarius is going to call some of my more psychically gifted people into that practice, into that type of connection, starting to recognize that there is more than just what is going on here, if you haven't already. And that's a theme that has been coming through my practice, and a lot of people have been seeking me out for psychic mediumship specifically, which is a very intuitive practice that you have to surrender to on a certain level. And there's a huge amount of trust, obviously, because there's no visible presence. It's just my words and your own cognition and your own psyche connecting. So if you're interested in that class, go check it out. I mean, you can sign up on my website or you can sign up through IG. If you want to do sliding scale, DM me because then I will just do it manually. Um, I don't have like a code or anything set up on the website for that. Anyways, really big stuff. Also, Sun conjunct Jupiter. It's going to be a weird thing of like this pressure cooker of the outer planets, but I also feel with this Sun Jupiter conjunction, this sudden visibility, this sudden expansion of self. Now, if you're not careful, this can be you going viral in a way you don't like. This can be you kind of overplaying your hand or putting too many eggs in a basket before it's like quitting your job before you sign the contract. Now, for some of you, you might just need to quit the job, and that's fine. And that's a metaphor, so you can apply it to anything. But if you want continued stability, like make sure you check all the boxes before you leap. Because if you do, you may not have it. Now, I will say it's happening on the eclipse portal, like entering it. And oftentimes I find that the eclipses very quickly return us to a place that we need to be. And so it might not be a bad thing for something to fall apart. But if you want to functionally not feel like you cause trauma and chaos in your life, take this as a day to put yourself out there. Just be conscious of what you're putting out into the world because it has the potential to pop off in a big way. Has the potential to blow up, has the potential to get a lot of visibility, especially where it is in your chart. We're going to see a lot of visibility around people in public spheres and public spaces. So keep this all in mind as we continue and move through this week. We're going to see some people skyrocketing to fame. We're going to see some people crashing and burning because of the opposition that Jupiter has to Pluto right now. Like, yeah, you can get visibility, but you can also dig up the past. Now, if you're not really ashamed of your past, then who cares? But it might be a lot of social pressure. It might be a little too much of the external world coming in. This will also be accountability, call outs, call ins. I can see a lot of infighting happening on this day because everyone's kind of vying for this high octane energy, forgetting that Pluto's on the other side being like, and there's so much more shit beneath the surface, guys. So that is kind of this week in a nutshell. Everything, like I said, is pretty condensed. Take a little peek sees it next week. Next week, actually, we don't have a whole lot going on. Literally three things happening. Now, are they fairly big three things? Yeah. But it feels like we get a little bit of a teensy weensy breather because the week after that is crazy and has the solar eclipse in Leo. So buckle up. Anyways, my loves, thank you for all of your support. If you enjoy this, please like and subscribe. Also, a huge thank you to everyone who does that. If you have any comments or questions, pop them below, and I will see you all later. Bye.